Dr. Nelson Makanda has been given the job, and he has taken an oath of office before the Chief Justice, no less, to say that I am going to do the job of ensuring that I steer my team of panel of experts to delivering a good and trusted electoral commission. Dr. Makanda, good morning.
Morning to you, Latif.
How are you doing?
I'm keeping well, even though in the recent past I have suffered something called Bell's palsy. You can see a bit of a tilt on my face.
Yes.
I woke up one morning, actually 3 months ago now, on 17th of November. I was nursing a cold and got to the bathroom. I noticed soap was going into my eye as I showered. I went to brush my teeth and realized that I was drooping. So I quickly took my image and asked AI, what is this? It told me it looks like Bell's palsy. So I went to church that Sunday morning and came back. I told my wife, this is what's happening. And went to hospital later. And they said, yeah, it's Bell's palsy. It's not permanent. It goes away within 6 months. I asked the doctor, so do I need to go home and get a sick off? He said, no. I think it's
Continue functioning
continue functioning as normal.
Yeah.
You do some physiotherapy and take 1 or 2 tablets for your nerve, because it's a facial nerve that supports the symmetry of your face and movement.
Sorry
So
to
what
hear
happens? What happens to that nerve?
That nerve gets inflamed,
Okay.
either because you have a viral infection or you have a tooth infection or a ear infection. The doctors say, we really don't know, but we guess those are some of the reasons why it happens. At that time, I had a cold. I had traveled and came back with a flu. And so, yeah, it's inflamed, but it heals within 6 months. That's what they say. I'm on my 3rd month. It's much better than it was in November and December.
Do they say it happens often, or is it rare?
It happens 1 in 5,000 people.
Okay.
1 in 5,000 people. Yes.
I actually know
Sorry
2
to hear that.
people, so my former colleagues, who separately got Bell's palsy, and I always keep wondering, so why does it happen at night?
I have no idea whether cold.
Yeah.
You expose yourself to the cold, or something is happening the way you sleep, and all that. That might be actually one of the reasons. Yeah.
Good to know that you're still able to perform your duties.
Yes, I am.
Just as normal. You're
Normal.
going through
Yes.
physiotherapy.
Yes. Yeah.
And well on the way to recovery.
Yes. Thank you.
So one of the things that we do here on the show is we like looking back at what's been said and looking at the important things that have been said. In future, Dr. Nelson Makanda, having appeared on this show, will be quoted, because of the things that you say.
Most
but
likely.
our girl here, she's called Good Girl Jano. Jano wa Maquotes. She looks through quotable quotes and she brings us one every day. Today she has one. And this is?
This is... sorry, I was laughing, saying I've already started taking notes so that as soon as Dr. Makanda says something, I'm able to put it down for future reference. We also like to give some hints as to who this person is. So we can describe them as a globally renowned comedian who comes from Africa and ended up going to the US and hosting a successful show, and really is one of the most, I would say, influential Africans of our time. So the quote is, progression, in my opinion, is often a series of stumbles forward. Who said that?
Progression, in my
I have an
opinion.
educated guess on who said that.
You don't, or you're saying you don't think you do?
I don't think I do.
Okay.
I don't think I do, but I like the quote very much. Yes.
You're like, I'm not sure who it is, but I like the quote.
I like the quote, yes.
Okay.
Daktari, he's a comedian.
Yes.
He's from South Africa.
He's from South Africa.
He's renowned globally. He has done many shows across the globe, but he also had a TV show in America.
A daily show in America. It's coming.
The Daily Show.
No, I think
Okay.
my children will have to.
They'll have to
ask
step
me.
in for that.
Yes,
Yeah,
They're
yes.
looking at you and
Yes.
wondering,
They're wondering, what's happening with you now today?
Tell them
Yes,
to
yes, yes.
what's up you,
Right.
you know, a little a cheat sheet chini ya maji. But of course, it's Trevor Noah who did
Okay,
say that.
Trevor Noah.
But
Excellent. Yes.
right, I know your kids are like, yeah, dad,
Dad,
Trevor Noah.
Yes,
But what does that mean to you when we say progression it's a series of failing forward?
Yeah.
Right? What does...
I think it just means that nothing is perfect.
True.
That we will stumble. But what makes us to succeed is that determination to continue. We fail today, we rise up, we take 2 steps, we fail again, we rise up, we take a few more steps, we rise up, we continue making that movement forward.
Yes. Has iEBC in the past made so many mistakes? Too many? In your view, how do we get, I know you're doing the selection panel, but how do we begin to regain the trust and momentum of iEBC, given that it has in many ways been bedeviled in the past with so many controversies and setbacks? So even in the spirit of moving forward, what do you think it will take to actually get iEBC to be that trustworthy platform that Kenyans want it to be?
I think in the past, yes, we had ECK a few years ago. You remember Justice Chesoni, succeeded by his colleague Kivuitu. And 1997, sat over our elections and gave us some multi-party elections. I think the best we had was 2002, and it was because of we had an IBC that had been put in place, ECK tripartite, if you like, enjoyed high confidence. They moved on 2005, did a referendum that was okay. 2007 did an election, but in that election, I think one side of government said that was a gentleman's agreement, and so they progressed into election. Though Kivuitu was on the seat, but there were many other people, quite a number of commissioners. We had issues there that came up. You remember Kivuitu saying somebody's cooking results, and that's the time the stronghold issue came up from some sides of the mountain. We had a collapse of the country because of the actions of the ECK. We had a new constitution coming into place. With that constitution, we had IEBC that helped us establish some by-elections and some boundaries. We got into iEBC with Isaka San. And many people expected with the new constitution that the guidelines we had been given in the Constitution, that this body will actually deliver free, fair, and independent, verifiable and transparent elections. What happened. Matters went to Supreme Court. Kenyans had a dispute around it. Baba traveled. He returned, and that's the time the name Baba came, when Baba was away in 2015. There was a negotiation that retired the commissioners in a gentleman's agreement. Retire, let's have a new commission. We had a new selection panel, which some of my bosses at that time was working for the National Council of Churches of Kenya. sat on that panel as we supported them, and chaired by Madam Musundi. And we had Chebukati come into office with great expectation. He comes into office, he starts a tug of war with the CEO of iEBC. At that time, handsome gentleman. Chiloba.
Yeah.
Yes. A bit of a struggle there, which sees a few commissioners dropping off. Started with Akombe, traveled and never came back. We had an election. Immediately after an election, 3 other commissioners dropped off, resigned for some reason. And we're left with 3 commissioners. And thankfully that Chebukati and his team stayed on. We had a replacement of those 4 commissioners, Cherera and her team, and we had an election. And on the eve of the results, what happened? Happened again. Boardroom fights and breakdown, a ruling of the Supreme Court. So we have had ups and downs. Issues around governance, issues around leadership, issues around election management, issues around resources and procurement. and issues around perceived partisanship in the iEBC. But to make a positive point is that, be as it may, Kenya still remains to be one of the best countries in Africa in election management. Maybe compared to South Africa and perhaps Ghana, but we are still far ahead of the rest of our peers on this continent. So we have had our own struggles. I think we have a very enlightened community, youth, a constitution that has given us rights, and so we know our rights. The demand for accountability and transparency, as stipulated in Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution, and the push of our political parties to want to gain leadership. And so I think that pressure sometimes is brought on the iEBC, and sometimes our leaders in iEBC carve in. But we are doing much better than many of our peers around here.
Right. I'll come back to how exactly to bring back the confidence, with more tangible things. But when we compare ourselves to our neighbors, sometimes I worry that the bar is a bit low within the African continent as far as elections are concerned. So maybe there's something we should strive to that's, outside the continent. Of course, South Africa is a good yardstick, but then, what next? But I want to go back to the process of having a properly constituted iEBC, which is something that has been a worry for a lot of people. Where are we on this journey? People have a very vague understanding of it. They know there's a selection panel. They know there's meant to be people from this, from the LSK, from the parties, etc. But where are we as far as constituting an iEBC, having by-elections for the seats that require them, potentially recalling MPs, which is something people have been saying they want to do, and then 2027 elections? Yeah.
Some people have called me chairman of iEBC. I'm not chairman of iEBC.
Right.
I'm chairman of selection panel. What happens is that the Constitution of Kenya has provided for an independent institution. And within the law that forms iEBC, that law from the start stipulated that there will be a selection panel that will sit made of independent persons nominated and put in office by the Gazette from the president, sworn in, and this independent body will select an independent group of persons to run the elections.
Right.
And that's how we had Isaac Hassan come into office. There was a bit of a dispute when he came out, when he was bungled out of his office and his team was brought out. There was an amendment to that law. That amendment brought in religious leaders into the group, because religious leaders were involved heavily in the negotiating the deal that got Isaac Hassan out of office, and convincing the president and convincing the leader of opposition that this can be done. Brought in professional bodies, particularly LSK, and brought in two sides of parliament, Senate and Parliament. At that time, Kiraitu and Orengo participated in that process. Soon after that, after Chebukati came into office, and we needed to replace the four who had left, Akombe and her team, Consolata, and the two gentlemen that had left, the law again was amended. So this law is amended almost every election cycle. Almost once or twice. This time it's been amended twice. So that was amended, and in that amendment, they brought in Parliamentary Service Commission, they brought in Public Service Commission, and they retained religious leaders in addition to LSK. So 7 members were brought into office. They gave us the Cherera team. Soon after that, they resigned and left. So that law brought a new selection panel into office, and I was part of that selection panel. Was made chair, but there was disputation by one side of the political divide, feeling that we did not participate in nominating members of that team. They felt they were not represented because Parliamentary Service Commission got in members, and I think the minority party did not agree to nominate members at that time. So there's a dispute around the credibility of that team.
Right.
There were demonstrations, many things happened. Our work stalled.
For months.
For months. We were brought in office in March of 2023. It stalled from March 2023 to January 27th, 2025.
And that's a long time.
That is a very long
Yes,
time.
that's a long time, about 2 years.
And if you look at that, Daktari,
Yes.
my question is also, part of a statement as well. Is it that we Kenyans don't have trust in the iEBC, or is it that the political rulers don't have trust in iEBC? I ask so because even with Kivoito, we did not have a problem going to the referendum in 2005. We did not have a problem turning up for votes for the election in 2007. With Isaac Hassan, we praised him for the 2010 referendum. In 2013, we went to the ballot. We voted. And there were very many elections and few petitions. Isaac Hassan was bundled out of office. Him plus his entire team. We bring in a new team. Again, 2017. Same. Kenyans went to the ballot on the second Tuesday of August. They elected their representatives. They went back home. They waited peacefully for the results to be announced. Results were announced for MCAs, we were okay. For MPs, we were okay. For women reps, for senators, for governors, we were okay. The Bomas one is where we have an issue. Akombe did not take off because of some election dispute somewhere in a ward.
No.
Or a governor's position anywhere. It was the politics, the high-octane politics at the presidential level. So is it that Kenyans don't have trust in the IEBC, or is it that politicians don't want to have trust in IEBC?
I don't think it's a... Well, the politicians are a reflection of society, because there's a crop that comes out of who we are. But be that as it may, I think Kenyans anticipate that elections will be fair, that elections will be handled in a manner that is transparent, and that results will express the will of the citizens of this country. And that's the expression of the Constitution. But I think the political class do not like a fair game.
They do not like a fair game.
I don't think that they like a fair game. So because they don't like a fair game, they exert pressure on election management, on the body, and sometimes on the system. And because of that pressure, if you have men and women that are not upright, that are not strong, that are not courageous, that are not of character, they cave in. And so some cave in by taking off.
Right.
I don't want to dirty my hands, so they leave. Some cave in by saying, okay, I will yield into the pressure that has been put on me. And sometimes we compromise. And that has been a character. And I think out of those perceptions of compromise, then the results that are announced sometimes are not trusted.
So
by
they lose
Kenyans.
credibility at that point.
So we lose credibility at that point. So because of that loss of credibility, be as it may, whether true or perceived, it creates distrust in our election management.
So we are saying the same thing then. We are in agreement.
Yes.
That by and large, we Kenyans, voters, don't have a problem. Don't have a problem with our elections.
No.
We are not the ones who apply pressure on these people to cave in, right?
No.
We turn up on that morning of Tuesday.
And vote.
We go, we vote, we go back home. And we wait for the results. And when they give us all the 1,930 results, we are fine.
Yes.
When they tell us about the 1,500 MCAs, across those wards, we are fine. The 47 governors, we are fine. The 47 senators, we are fine.
Yes.
The 290 MPs, we are fine. The one presidential election, I will put it to you that by and large, we are fine. But the candidates are not. And they're the ones who now dirty the water. They muddy the water so that they paint the whole thing to be not credible. 1,930 elections are credible. One has a big dispute, national dispute. That doesn't mean that iEBC is incapable, in my opinion. But ruminate on that. Let's take a break. Let's also hear what you think and what you'd like us to ask Dr. Nelson Makanda. He is the chair of the iEBC selection panel that is now in office, 9-member panel that is has asked for people to apply for the position of iEBC chairperson and commission, and the Taifa Leo has a headline today. Watu 1,800 waomba kazi ya iEBC. 1,800 Kenyans want to work at the electoral management body. And it's Dr. Makanda and his team's job to go through all of them and give us how many?
We'll give the president 11 names. 11
names.
2 names of chair for him to choose 1. 9 names of members for him to choose 6.
Bas. So from 1,800 whittled down to 11. That's a conversation we're having with Dr. Nelson Makanda. Keep it here. We'll be back shortly.
Of course, we're back in conversation with the chairperson of the iEBC selection panel, discussing exactly what we're doing, where we're at, what we need to be doing, how to instill confidence in, of course, this panel and the commissioners that come as a result. And I wanted to just do a little numbers game because for the sake of public education, a lot of us are not familiar with who sits on the iEBC selection panel. So maybe just give us a breakdown. How many people sit on this panel, Daktari?
We're 9.
9?
The law was amended last year, provided for 9 members of the selection panel.
All right. Give us a breakdown of where
2 members are from IRCK.
What is that?
Interreligious Council of Kenya.
Yes.
Representing the religious community.
Yes.
And I'm one of those with Fatuma. Then 2 members representing Parliamentary Service Commission. So we have 2 members nominated by Parliamentary Service Commission, providing for 1 from minority and 1 from majority. Then we have 2 members, 2 professional members, 1 from LSK and 1 from, today it's from ISPAC.
Yeah, okay.
Then we have 3 members from PPLC. PPLC is Parliamentary Political Parties Liaison Committee.
Right.
Providing for 1 from non-parliamentary parties, parties that are political parties that are not in parliament.
Right.
So 1 person. Then 1 from minority and 1 from majority.
Right.
So that brings together
a total of 9.
Total of 9 of us.
So, and we discussed this last week, when we look at these numbers, essentially 3 from the PPLC and 1 from majority, 1 from minority. That sets up for 5 members not members of parliament, basically politicians, quote unquote, on the iEBC selection panel. Is that a point of concern for the panel? Because ideally, you have a horse in the race, but you're also part of the, the vetting and the judging committee. Is that problematic?
I don't think it should be problematic because Kenyans seem to have a reference of IPPG. And IPPG was basically interparliamentary parties group that nominated the Kivuitu team. And they seem to feel our elections were much fairer, were much better. And so it does appear that that is what has been carried into the current process. That the political group, the minority and the majority and the ones that are not in parliament should have a say. And so they have nominated people. Thankfully, that the people nominated are professionals. And so because of that, as a chair, I have not experienced any challenge with any of them. I think they feel we have been given a national duty, and as much as we came in representing our political groupings, we are here now for Kenya. And all of us have had to shed off that identity. Because if I sit there and say, I have come from a religious community, now let's ensure that we fill up this place with people who are aligned to the religious community. That cannot be the agenda. And so we must negotiate amongst ourselves. We must look at the candidates who have applied, because Kenyans, 1,800 of them, and 48, have sent their applications. We must look at them fairly. And so what I have done in the past 1 week has been to take the team for an induction training. Training in HR. What are the best practices for selecting people and appointing people? Training in election management, so that we know what is our task, a bit of history of our elections,
Right.
and looking at ourselves internally as a country and the role that these men and women will be playing. Looking at the different needs that have pushed us to where we are as a country. Why did we have to stall for the last 24 months before we got this team working again? So we have gone through a process to ensure that we shed off our glasses and come into this process as a neutral arbiter of the 1,800 Kenyans that have applied. I lead an institution, a university, Africa International University, full of young people, youth. I meet them, I sit with them, I pray with them, I talk with them, we eat together. So I cannot come to this space and say, because I'm a vice chancellor of a university, I must fill up this place with young people. That mind must be out of me and focus at the need that Kenya has.
But Dr. Makanda, is there still a concern? Because I think what tends to happen is that commissioners seem to be put under duress. Huh?
Yes.
We're talking about now, we're in a different frame of mind until 2027 comes. I don't know if the word is measures or mitigations, but even somebody here, I like the question they've asked is, what assurances are there that you've done the work and you're telling us how you've done it and how you're trying to make sure that the process has diligence and is fair. But it's oftentimes, even if it starts that way, it's oftentimes then co-opted in a way that derails the entire electoral process. Is there a mitigation or something that you're already considering in light of that being a possibility?
We are conscious of our society. We are conscious of our democratic processes. We are conscious of our politicians. And because of that, we have sworn to have full fidelity to the provisions of the Constitution of Kenya. So we will not compromise on integrity. The people that we give to Kenya must pass the integrity test. The people that we give to Kenya must also represent the face of Kenya, because they say regional representation. They must include women and youth, and I'm hoping that young people have also applied into this process. We would like to be guided by the principles provided for us in Chapter 6 of the Kenyan Constitution, the provisions of Article 88 that governs the iEBC. We would like to be governed by the Mwongozo Code. We would like to be free and fair and transparent. And the team has made a commitment that we will do our processes openly. And the Constitution, and the law actually provides that our interviews will be public. So, Latif, you have a room to listen to the candidates and come up with your own judgment and say, I think here, it should have been Makanda and not Latif. Yes.
And that, I am completely on that. And the fact that, in fact, my rallying call to all of us as fixers, as all of us as citizens, is when these interviews begin, even before they begin, we'd like to know who are the 1,800. How do they shortlist to whatever shortlist they're going to come up with? And then those that go for the interviews, let's watch how they're interviewing them. And because Dr. Makanda is saying yes, from where he's coming from the conversation that he's had with his team, is that all of them are committed to doing the job right. And Dr. Makanda, I'll tell you, maneno haya si mageni ila kwa mgeni. Because even the commission itself, the Chebukati Commission, the initial Chebukati Commission of 2017, the second Chebukati Commission of 2022, all those commissioners would say we are committed to doing this job the right way. Okay? And just like you've said, it's not about their credibility. We don't have anything that we can say, this is something we can say directly impugns the credibility of any of these individuals, but they caved into pressure. They were under excess pressure, and there was the perception of the public that, you know what, the Cherara 4, for example, they came in during the handshake era, so maybe, you know, they were the handshake people. The other one, the initial Chebukati team, after that entire selection process that had, you know, the Senate and the National Assembly, Kiraito and Orengo and the others coming in and saying, let's create a new commission. It was the same. But we end up where we end up because politicians come and muddy the waters and they paint all of them in bad light, which is completely unfair. How do you shield these individuals from that? Yeah. And I'm saying that because I read the book by Isaac Hassan.
You have, yes.
And I've had interviews with Isaac Hassan and the members of his commission. Those people had integrity. I mean, there's nothing we can say, you know, this guy or this lady. And the pain that they went through being bundled out of office the way they were, it basically just cast them in bad light. That from that point on, you don't even want to look at your children because they ask you, Dadi, nilikuona kwa TV ukifutwa kazi, watu wakilala kwa barabara wakisema, you know, so and so must go. It's a bad thing. How do you shield them from that?
This is a difficult call, but there are 3 C's that I think that this panel must have a look at. One is competence. We must ensure that we get competent men and women in office. Competence talks to the skill and their capacity to deliver on the job. Number 2 is their character, which speaks to their integrity. Who are you when nobody is looking? Defines their character. But then the last C is pulling out on character and calling it courage. Courage. That's what the Chief Justice in 2013 had, Maraga, that other Chief Justice may not have had.
In 2017.
In 2017. Courage. So we will try as much as possible to discern and determine the capacity of these people to withstand pressure. You may be competent, you may be a good person in terms of your character, but your tenacity, do you have the capacity to withstand pressure? Because pressure will come in from politicians and from interested parties to stand as a fair arbiter and say no when you need to say no, and yes when you need to say yes. So that is going to be the test of our panel.
Are there any members of the selection panel that are below the age of 35?
No, there isn't. As far as, anyway, people have not told me their ages, but looking at their faces, yes.
I asked that because, again, 70% of this country is young, average age 19. If the selection panel does not have that represented, then it's very hard for the commission itself to have the youth represented. And I doubt it's a issue of qualifications then, because, I am trying to see how we get from a selection panel that doesn't have this representation to a committee that has this representation.
Mariam, I'm hoping that young people have applied. We haven't looked at the names yet and their ages. But I'm confident that in the 1,848 applicants, that there are young people there. The Act provides for an experience of 10 years, which sometimes you may feel like it's not too fair for young people.
Yeah.
But I do think that there will be young people who have an experience of 10 years. I think that will be the only limiting factor, and our panel is going to go out of the way to provide opportunity to young people who have applied. I do think that there are good young people who out there with a zeal, with a courage, who are competent, and some of them who may have even exercised themselves in these electoral matters. It's just how we will discern who among them is the right young person.
So
I think we
can
must
hold you to that.
Yes.
Yes. When we come back after the committee is fully constituted,
Yes.
we can see how many young people are on it and move from there.
Yeah.
right?
Even
And
from the
say-
shortlist.
Actually, yeah, from the shortlist.
From the shortlist.
From the shortlist, we should be able to see
So yeah, to get a scope.
many young people who are going for the interviews.
Yeah.
Right? And then of those many young people, we'll be watching how they perform. I have an issue, though, with how we've structured our law. 10 years experience in what exactly?
They say 10 years experience in law, in management, in IT, in financial management, in leadership. Almost about 5
So a
or so.
25-year-old already disqualified, 29-year-old,
Even-
I think
30-year-old.
35 is probably your 30. 30
Even a
35 is probably-
32-year-old.
Not 32-year-old, yeah.
So let's say 10 years experience in law. That means that you went through university, you went through Kenya School of Law.
Yes.
And then
you're about 25 years when you qualify.
Yes.
there you go. So you must be 35 and above.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're now coming with the experience of law. If it's management, it's almost the same. So basically, it has locked out
Young people.
very many young people,
But
young professionals.
I'm assuming
because
that-
unless you're saying that you have 10 years experience as a farmer, where you can say that, I started farming at 19.
I'm assuming that Latif, you are a student leader when you are on campus. And that experience can be brought to bear. You led the University of Nairobi. And you were 19 at that time when you began leading and exercising leadership. So I think we should be able to discern all those type of qualities out of the young applicants that have brought their CVs and begin to see how then can we be able to get out 10 years of management and leadership from their CVs, so that then we are able to ensure that young people are part of this process.
So I get it from you that when we look at them, we should not just look at their paper,
Yes,
academic
their
paper,
paper,
and
academic,
say,
yeah.
your profession is an accountant.
Yes.
Do you have 10 years experience as an accountant? We should also look at leadership.
Yes.
So if somebody says that I was, a leader in our youth group in church,
Yes,
When
yes,
I was a
yes,
teenager.
yes, that's significant.
that should count.
That is significant. So how they bring out that in their CVs is what is also going to help us to be able to design, because we are mining data from the CVs at the point of shortlisting, because we don't have any other document to use other than your CV. So how you have presented your CV is what is going to help us to be able to determine that you actually qualify to be shortlisted. And I do think that there are many young people out there, 29-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 32-year-olds to 35, that actually will qualify for this process.
I really hope we'll see that. It'll be interesting to note, because what you're saying then, I hope, gives confidence that we're looking beyond quote-unquote technical experience, but really looking at, student leadership and that kind of thing. I want to read just a bit of feedback coming in on YouTube. Some of it is comments, some of it is a question, some of which has been addressed. King Anthony has sent quite a number of messages saying iEBC is perfectly fine. The problem comes with the corruptible personalities that occupy those seats. We've spoken to that. Then there's also what we need is judicial expediency and uprightness in conducting its mandate to protecting innocent Kenyans like the commissioners when they are faced with negative political profiling and attack. That's something he said.
Yes,
maybe you can speak to that.
It's a good comment.
It's a good comment. Before we come back to you, Dr. Robbie Obaga says, methinks the experience thing is used to lock out young people. We can't have 10 years experience yet. There's not enough job to give the experience. Although, Robbie, I think Dr. has mentioned other ways. So again, just going back to, the profiling, the negative political profiling and attacks that will that will no doubt face these commissioners. It's granted. It's granted. And so just thinking through protecting them. You've said competence, character, courage.
Yes.
You've spoken to that.
Yeah.
They'll come in with these characteristics. They will be competent, they'll have courage, they'll have competence. But not even that can protect you from profiling and attacks during the electoral process. Have you thought through that, just kind of the protection? This is one thing, but what happens when...
I think that is about the individual when they face that. One is that when you come into public space, you have accepted that some of these things will happen. I mean, when I was asked to become chairman by the panel unanimously, there were many tweets. There's a tweet from one person, one individual, who looked at me and caricatured my face, the way I was looking, and said, this is a kinsman of one of the political players, because I look like... Yes, yeah. So
Oyo ni ndugu ya nani?
yes, huyu ni ndugu ya nani. So because I have come into public space,
Kenyans.
I must be able
To withstand
to
the pressure.
withstand that pressure. Because once you ask the individuals that have asked for this position, they must know that stepping into the public space will come with cartoons of their faces, will come with name calling, but they must fix their eyes on the ball. The good thing is that elections in Kenya is very well regulated, to the extent that actually the commission can stand out and say, we are only observing the law. There's nothing that stops the commission from saying the results of these elections are as at announced at the constituency.
Yep.
And that's what Justice Mchelule ruled. And it's in law. So if they keep fidelity to the law and protect themselves around the provisions of the law, I think the individuals that we will give this country should be able to deliver a good election in 2027 and give us good boundaries, because they will also have a responsibility to delimit our constituencies, our wards, and our counties.
You know, I come back to my pet peeve.
What is your pet peeve?
Politicians are the enemy of the electoral process in Kenya.
That's what I was asking. They're the
Okay.
enemy who make it difficult. Yeah.
They are the ones. We, again, I put it out to you. How many people participated in the last election?
There are many.
13 million.
Yes.
Or
yeah.
thereabout.
About 14 million.
Many
yes,
others,
yes,
about 8 million others did not.
Did not, yes. Yeah.
Okay? But those are not even the issue, the enemy. It is a political class that's the enemy. It is saying that this is Gor Mahia AFC,
Yes.
and Gor Mahia AFC have to choose the referee for the match. And on Gor Mahia AFC, however the way this game goes, the players of Gor will feel, apana, this guy, I think he was seen, Aliono Kando Zaidi, na AFC. Or the Ingwe people will say the same thing about Kogalo people. The fans are watching a game.
Right?
How do we shield our commission and make it truly, properly independent? Independent of political interference by the players.
Starts from funding. The commission must be fully funded by the exchequer without waiting for favor from the president or from anybody else. So funding, because that then will create space for them to be able to deploy resources, personnel, and technology that is required for our election. So that they remove themselves, because that then will protect the individuals from the process. Once we have funding, we have systems in place, and we have technology in place, my role is to come and say, this is what we fed in, this is what came out. I have no role to play. If that is going to be the mind of the commission, then the politician will basically be told, sir, it was very hard for me, but these are the votes that came from Kibra constituency. It's not me who announced, they were announced by a constituency returning officer. And your agents have already signed off. I have no role in it. I hope that these men and women that we will give this country will have that mind. I think it is possible for them to tell the politicians no. I mean, if you look at what has happened in Addis this past weekend, there's nothing you could do.
It was clear.
It was clear.
Matokeo ni hayo.
A vote has happened,
Yeah.
and you go by the results of that vote. And that's what we are asking our politicians to do. Do your work well, campaign, do everything else that you can do. Don't harm Kenyans. Ask them to vote for you. And once they have gone to vote, polling stations have closed at 5. By midnight of that night, let's have the results. Let all media stations bring us the results. I mean, the results of the US were called before the official institution announced the results. It's the media who called the results. Why can't that happen in Kenya?
Okay, remains to be seen.
It's true.
Yeah.
Coming to the top of the hour, but Dr. Makanda, before you go, give us the timelines. Today is the 17th of February, okay? You already have closed submission for applications.
Yes, we have.
So what happens next? Until when?
In the next 1 or so weeks, we are going to be looking at the applicants to be able to mine the data that is in there, verify, so that some people, because they are very zealous, they send a soft copy on email, they bring a hard copy, and they even post another one by registered mail. So we want to look at those 1,848 and rationalize them. Once we have done that, we will have something we call a long list. That long list we shall publish in Kenya Gazette and 2 newspapers of national distribution. Okay. That's what the law provides. Once that has happened, we will go and sit down and shortlist. It will be a difficult task to come up with a number that we can interview. Give or take maybe 60 or 70 names that we will shortlist. The panel will agree on how many of those that will be interviewed. Maybe eight names for every one position, 88 or something like that. We will then publish our shortlist. And we will ask Kenyan institutions with mandate to investigate and Kenyans to participate on our shortlist. Tell us about character A and B. What do you know about Makanda? So that Kenyans can give us their view. But at that same time, we'll be asking ESCC, DCI, we'll be asking if they are members of professional bodies, LSK, we'll be asking registrar of political parties, tell us, did this person participate in election the last 5 years? Or is this person an official of a political party? We'll be seeking to justify all those things. We even go to the registrar of persons to be able to tell us, this ID is confusing. This person says it's from Mandera, but it says Mombasa. Where do they come from? So that then we are clear about their whatever. Once that period is over, and these people are invited for interview, and we have feedback about another 2 weeks, in mid-March, we shall start our interviews.
Mid-March.
Mid-March is the interviews. And publishing the shortlist will be around when? Early March?
Early March,
okay.
Maybe 6th, 7th, okay. Between 7th and 10th, thereabout. And then we will allow people 1 week or 2 weeks to prepare for interviews, those who have applied and they are in Sudan, to find their way back to Nairobi, so that they can be interviewed. We will do our interviews for about 2 weeks because the numbers are huge and we need to be able to give everybody a fair hearing and space. Within that period, early April, we should have completed our interviews. I would like to give the panel a week and a half, God willing, to write the report, their exit report, and to agree on suitable candidates from their interviews. Hoping that by 27th of April, which is the upper limit, we are hoping that about 25th, thereabout, but the upper limit is 27th of April, we should hand over the list of names and our exit report to the president, and the process from there on, it's the president. The president, within 7 days, is supposed to pick 7 names from that, 1 name of the chair, and 6 names of commissioners, forward them to Parliament. Parliament is given 2 weeks to be able to go through the process, vet them, the individuals, vote on them, and forward the report to the president. Then they will be sworn in if Parliament so agrees.
That should be in May.
That should be in May.
Okay.
That should be in May. Yes.
That's a good time. That's a helpful timeline. Thank you.
Yes, that should be.
Yeah.
It's important that we all know this so that we can then all track
Yes.
what's happening.
Yeah.
So that by the time the commission comes up with the long list, we can see 1,800 odd names that have applied.
Yes.
And then we start also now digging behind and seeing what do you think about the suitability and credibility of these individuals. Yes. When the commission comes up with a short list of whatever number, 60, 70, 80, 90, whatever number,
yes,
then we again look at, are these the best 90 from the 1,800, we also have to tell ourselves, do we agree with the commission, with the selection panel, that this is a short list? Once you get there, when the interviews start, we start now also looking and interrogating. How are these people answering? Do we see courage? Do we see competence in this? Do we see character in this? What more do we see out of these individuals? We also come up with our own 11 names as citizens and say, this, as citizens, these are our 11 names. And we hope that these names at least will be included in Dr. Makanda's committee's names.
Most likely, give or take some of the names. I mean, it's not possible to have a public interview and have a public opinion on candidates
that agrees.
Yes. and have a diametrically very different view.
Right.
I do think that there will be some concurrence with what the public feels, but the public must be informed that we'll be looking at regional balance, we'll be looking at age, character of the individuals, because some people will not pass because of their age. We'll be looking at gender. We'll be looking at persons with disability. So it's all that mix that is provided for by our constitution to arrive at our 11 names. So all those permutations will be applied by the selection panel, but we devote ourselves. As far as I know, my 8 colleagues, we have made an oath and a pledge, and we have committed to each other that we will not disappoint Kenya.
We'll hold you to that. Dr. Nelson Makanda, thank you very much for joining us today.
Appreciated it.
And we hope to have more conversations with you, going forward as well.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Makanda is the chairperson of the iEBC selection panel. It's a 9-member team that will be looking at about 1,848 applicants for the position of chairperson and member of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. They will be shortlisting them, interviewing them, and handing to the president 11 names. 2 of those for, one of them to be a chairperson, and 9 to be commissioners, and the positions for commissioner 6. We've been having this conversation. In the next hour, we ask ourselves, this skeptical youth, can they trust the iEBC going forward? Do they have an issue with the iEBC anyway? Keep it here for that. Our guest is Angel Mbuthia. She worked in the last election as a part of a group of youth who were co-opted by the iEBC to be in the iEBC coordination panel for the last election. That's coming up in the next hour. Fixing the nation, one conversation at a time.